This motherboard CPU combo have been with me for over 5 years and originally started life in this Thermaltake case back in 2020. Since then, let's just say this combo has seen it all. And today, it's time for a change. This motherboard is the final piece of a 5-year journey. My mission to build a seamless, clutter-free PC. And it all began with one simple comment. That comment completely changed the way I saw PCs. It wasn't just about building a machine anymore. It was art. At first, it was small changes, moving my radiator, adding extensions, routing cables in new ways. I even made some custom glass panels. But the breakthrough was hiding the radiator tubes. Then, the Lian Li O11D Evo dropped, and I went all in. Custom glass, painted parts, the whole deal. For a little while, I thought I'd reached the finish line. Then, back connect motherboards appeared. From the moment I saw them, I knew I had to make it happen. So 6 months ago, I swapped into the Johnsbo TK2 to prep for the new back connect motherboard. Not only could this case support the back connect motherboard, but after modifying the case a little bit, I was able to completely hide the radiator in the back portion of the case. And so I was one step closer to my dream. But there was still an issue. I could not find a back connect motherboard for retail price anywhere. After 6 months of waiting for this motherboard, I found it. The board that finally makes my 5-year vision possible. Let's rebuild. The original radiator cutout was made for the NZXT Z73, but the new Kraken Elite is a little bit taller with a block at the hose connection. That meant I had to cut the case a little more to make it fit in the same space. I then filed the edges smooth and it was ready to go. Now it was time to prep the motherboard. The CPU for this project is AMD's Ryzen 9900X. I chose it based on my last 5 years of usage, mostly productivity, video editing, and light gaming. This red contact frame wasn't necessary, but it makes cleaning up thermal paste just a little bit easier. And since I usually repaste my CPU every 8 to 12 months, that alone was worth it. For RAM, I went with 4 sticks of Corsair Dominator Platinum, 64 gigabytes total. I picked this specific kit for 3 reasons. The height helps hide the radiator pipes, I like the look, and I already use Corsair software for other products, so it was a perfect fit. The SSD was a recent upgrade, so I just carried it over. It's a 4TB FX 900 Pro from HP. Installing the motherboard was the biggest rush. You spend so long in the planning stage, the waiting stage, and then bam, it was all suddenly clicking into place. My masterpiece finally taking shape. I've spent years hiding cables for that wireless look, and this NZXT cooler fixed that with one cable. This build was riding on this moment. If it didn't fit, my vision had to change. But yeah, it fit like a glove. Installing the power supply was no different than before, and there was plenty of room for it. Plugging the cables in from the back, that felt a little weird at first, but honestly, it was really satisfying. I managed to fit all this, plus a few hubs for various devices back here, and it all fit perfectly. To tidy it all up, I used zip ties and just guided the cables where they fit best. Now, this cable management is not gonna win any awards, but as limited as the space was, I think it turned out pretty great. And now we're here. You can already start to see the vision coming together, but we're not done yet. I 3D printed a handful of parts that are gonna take this build to a whole new level. First, I designed this cover that hides the radiator pipes completely. I started with a small cover just to get the dimensions right and made it better with every iteration. I eventually landed on this part here. It curves with the pipes down low and fits beautifully between the cooler block and ram sticks. Next, I took a bit of inspiration from the AORUS B650E Stealth ICE and designed a cover for this corner. I needed this to be quick and easy to remove, so I designed it to house some magnets. And the magnets lined up with the screws to hold it in place. I wrapped this to match the motherboard, but had some issues with the colors and stuff, so I decided to wrap the motherboard to keep it all cohesive. I tested this cover extensively to make sure nothing underneath it was getting too hot, and so far I've had no issues, but always keep in mind with parts like this you have to be a little careful just because sometimes things are not meant to be covered. Next up was a small part. I wanted to cover up the screw right here, so I quickly printed up this cover, wrapped it to match, and slid it in place. Much better. Finally, I had to cover the last bit of the radiator pipes. I designed a cover that fits nicely and matched the curve of the pipes. I printed this in black to match the paint job of the case, and when it slides into place, it just hides everything so well. Once I got the fans in place, I felt it was missing something. The cable-free vision wasn't complete because I could still see some cables in these cable pass-throughs. This case doesn't come with covers or grommets, and my first thought was to 3D print some. Then I had another idea. What if I use a sheet of plastic to create a false back? So I got some measurements and cut the sheet to fit. I also 3D printed some spacers and stuck them to the back of the sheet. Once in place, it completely covered all the holes, pass-throughs, and cables. The funny part is, this was just a proof of concept and it fit perfectly. So I left it alone for now, and I might improve it in the future if needed. Now it's time to install the GPU, and I fully intended to redesign and reprint this GPU bracket that I 3D printed about 6 months ago. But I haven't had a chance, so for now, I'll just reuse it. Basically, the idea was for this to screw into the fans and sit on top of the fans. Then the riser cable screws right into it. Right now it's just zip tied, but it works and it's very low profile. The second part to this GPU bracket is this rectangle that I 3D printed, also around the same time. This just sits under the GPU and keeps it from sagging. This originally had some LED strips inside of it, but I've since removed them, and I have plans to also redesign this. I then got these 180-degree PCIe connectors to further hide any cables. The cables just run down behind the GPU and to the power supply. Well, this is it. This build has been my art piece for 5 years. What started as a simple build is now the clean, seamless PC I always dreamed of. It's been a fun ride and I'm so happy with the turnout. Who knows what the future holds? I'm not even sure. But now I'm curious, would you change anything or have done anything differently? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with your friends.